Hey, how's it going, do-it-yourselfers? Got a good one for you today. Today I'm going to show you 3 ways that you can remove air bubbles from your engine's cooling system. So yeah, whenever you open your engine's cooling system, maybe in order to fix a leak or replace a faulty component, afterwards you always need to put the coolant back in, but you also need to bleed all the air pockets out of your engine's cooling system. Otherwise, you could run into trouble in a way of your engine overheating, or if the air bubbles get in your heater core, your heater not working and you're not getting hot air coming out of your air vents. Or depending on your car's make and model, you could have other performance related issues. And in the case of these older Hondas, which is this guy right here, 93 Honda Prelude with a 2.3 liter engine, if you don't get all the air pockets out of your cooling system, at idle, your RPM will fluctuate up and down, which to most, that cannot possibly be related to having air pockets in your engine. And that will send some people down a rabbit hole, which involves replacing their idle air control valve or their throttle position sensor, or maybe other sensors. All the while, they just simply needed to bleed the air out of their cooling system. All right, so let's get into it. So your engine's cooling system is designed in a way where the highest point of the system is going to be at your radiator cap. That is so that the air bubbles or the air pockets in the system, if given enough time, can work themselves through the system and end up in that location and then get bled off into the atmosphere. So you want to make sure when you do this, you're parked on a level surface. And as you can see, I got this car on the car lift, and my car lift is obviously level, so we're good there. But even better yet, you might want to try to park uphill just to raise this point just a little bit more. Nothing too steep, maybe like a 5 or 10 degrees incline should do it. And again, that's because, as we talked about, air bubbles in the system like to work themselves to the highest point, so you give them a highest point at the radiator cap, makes your life a lot easier. And it goes without saying, whatever you do, don't park downhill, because then the highest point might be in the heater core or the back of the engine, and then the air pockets, the air bubbles will end up trapped in there, and you won't be doing much good. All right, so the first method, the cheapest method, is to get yourself a funnel that looks like this. The bottom of the set funnel has to fit into your radiator super tight, like this. And then you would press down on the funnel, making sure it's in there tight where it can't tilt over easily. So you want to use a funnel that's shorter and wider, and not a funnel that's taller like this, because as we put coolant in the system and then turn on the car to try to bleed the system of air pockets, the coolant will come back up into the funnel, and if it's taller funnel like this, it could make it more likely to tilt over, spilling coolant all over your engine or yourself. And of course, you can be somewhat creative with this, as I've shown in the past. So let's say if you got a funnel where it's not tight at the bottom where it goes into the radiator, you can put some duct tape around it to try to increase the circumference of that funnel so that when you press it down, it's nice and tight and stays at the top of your radiator. Next, you want to open the heater core to the system. You do that if you got a mechanically controlled one by simply turning this all the way to the hottest position. If you got an electronically controlled one, you put the key in the ignition, and then you turn on the heater. You don't have to start the car just yet, but that will open up the heater core. All right, next, before we put coolant in the system, you want to find the bleeder screw if your car is equipped with one and open it. Now on this car, it's located on the thermostat housing. Here, that's our bleeder screw right there. So you want to crack that open by turning it counterclockwise. And then you want to start adding coolant to the system, all the while keeping an eye on that bleeder screw. And then once coolant starts coming out of that bleeder screw, you want to tighten it. Now I'm not going to do this right now because this method is actually not the method I'll be using today to refill the system and remove all the air pockets. But I have footage from previous videos that I'll be putting on the screen so you can follow that along. But next, you want to make sure the coolant you put into this funnel stops right at the bottom. Where it comes through the funnel, you want to stop putting coolant to the system right at the bottom. You want to keep this to the minimal because as you later turn on the car and the coolant heats up, it's going to want to come up through this funnel. So you want to start off way at the bottom. And before you turn on the car even, you want to go ahead and squeeze your upper and the lower radiator hoses. This will allow for dislodging of the air pockets that may be in them. And if that happens, and if the coolant level goes down, you want to make sure you add more coolant. Again, making sure it doesn't come up too much from the bottom of the funnel. And after doing all that, you want to get in the car and start the engine. And then once the engine starts, again, you want to keep an eye on the coolant level in the funnel. Also, again, you want to start squeezing the radiator hoses, both the upper and the lower one. Other things you can do to try to dislodge air bubbles from the system is to simply rev the engine. If you've got a mechanically controlled one or a drive-by cable like we have here, you just come up here and do this a bunch of times. This will rev your engine, help to dislodge air bubbles from the system. And of course, if your throttle plate is electronic controlled or drive-by-wire, you need to do this from inside the car by the gas pedal. And you want to do this until your cooling fans come on and off twice, which usually takes anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes or so. All the while, of course, keeping an eye on the coolant level in the funnel. If it goes down, add more coolant. And besides your fans coming on and off, you also want to make sure that both your radiator hoses, both the upper and the lower radiator hose, feel about the same temperature to the touch. Because when that happens, that means that your thermostat has opened and now coolant is circulating throughout your engine. And then after your thermostat opens, you want to wait another minute or two. Again, rev the engine a couple times, make sure all the air bubbles out, keep an eye on the coolant level again, and then you can turn off the engine. And then next comes the tricky part, which is removing the funnel with the hot coolant in it without spilling it all over your engine or yourself. There's a couple of ways to do this. If you have a turkey baster, for example, you can use that maybe to get the coolant out from the funnel and then remove the funnel. But if not, you can use a screwdriver and a rag wrapped around the end of the screwdriver, and then you squeeze that to the bottom of the funnel. That will keep the coolant from spilling out from the bottom, and then you remove both the screwdriver with the funnel into your catch can. Goes without saying, I would actually not use this funnel to do this procedure. This is for demonstration purposes. I would use a wider and bigger funnel than this because this is too small for this system. If I were to use this, the coolant will probably come up to around the edge, and it'll be just too unstable and wobbly. All right, now I think I should mention that even if you're very careful while doing this method, there's a 50% chance, especially if you're going to be doing this for the first time, that you're going to at least accidentally tip this funnel over and then spill coolant all over your engine, or even worse, you're going to spill hot coolant all over yourself. So if you have the luxury of time and have a little bit of money, you want to probably do the next method. And the next method is to simply use a spill-free funnel like this that comes with all these adapters that will help secure it to the top of your radiator. So yeah, these are not that expensive. They're 27 bucks on Amazon with overnight shipping, which is pretty good. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested. But basically, as the name suggests, these are spill-free funnels. So basically, you would find the right adapter, put it on your radiator, then you would secure it down with one of these guys, and then you would put the funnel on. And that's pretty much it. And then of course with this, you don't have to worry about this tipping over or this being too small where coolant will come up and spill over either. And then when it's time to remove this after you're done bleeding the system, you use this. The handle on this is broken on mine, but basically you would simply put this all the way down into the hole. That will keep the coolant in here. And then you pull this up with the coolant in it and get that out of the way to your catch can. You remove that, then you drain that into your catch can. All right, so the third method, which is the method we're going to use today to add coolant to the system and remove all the air from the system, is to simply pull a vacuum on the system before you add the coolant to the system. That way you get all the air out from the system. You put in a vacuum and then use the vacuum that's in the system to suck in the coolant into the system. Now, in order to do this, of course, you're going to need this tool. Now, in my case, this tool came with my radiator pressure tester kit that you see before you. Of course, they do sell this separately. But it's always good to have this pressure tester kit because you have all these adapters that will hit all the different size radiator and whatnot. All right, so here's how this thing works. So first, you get the right adapter from your kit, and then you install it on your radiator. Like this, you gotta make sure it's a perfect match, everything is tight. Now, if you don't have one of these adapters and you only have this tool, this will come with its own universal adapter that you'll probably be able to use. Next, we'll attach this blue hose to our adapter. All right, next, making sure this valve is in the closed position, we're gonna add sharp air to the system. All right, so here's how this thing works. So once we open this valve, compressed air will travel through our hose, through here, out this hose, which we have pointed at one of these buckets that you see before us. That hose, we're gonna point it into that bucket. And then once we open up this valve here, this guy right here, this will open up this part of this tool, which is attached to this blue hose, which is attached to our radiator or cooling system. So once we open that, as this air moves through this side of the system, it will, due to the Venturi effect, will pull a vacuum from here down out, which is again attached to our cooling system. Then once you pull a vacuum, obviously you're removing all the air from the system. And then afterwards, after you pull the vacuum on the system, you can close this valve, and then you would open up this valve, this guy right here, which is attached to this hose, which is in another bucket. Now this bucket is in this hose, and this bucket is in the coolant that's supposed to go to your system, to your cooling system. And of course, you want to make sure this hose is all the way at the bottom, because since we have pulled the vacuum on the system, we're going to be sucking in all the coolant that's in this bucket through this hose down into this blue hose into our cooling system. And if the end of that hose is not all the way at the bottom, it will suck in air to defeat the whole purpose. And you need this hose pointed at this bucket, because as you go and pull a vacuum on the system, you're going to suck out whatever remaining coolant that's still in the system. So you want to be able to catch that. Also, you want to find out the capacity of your cooling system and put just a little bit more, maybe a quart more of coolant in this bucket just to be on the safe side. All right, so enough talking. Allow me to demonstrate. So first we're going to open this valve. Then we'll crack this valve open. And there, as you can see, we're pulling vacuum on the system. And while we're pulling a vacuum, we're going to crack this other valve open just to bleed out the air that's inside this hose that's coming from our coolant bucket. And we're going to do this, slowly, but I'm doing this one-handed with one hand. I got the camera, here we go. And we're going to turn it off right there. And now we're going to close this valve. And now we're going to look and we're going to wait a few minutes, make sure that vacuum holds. All right, so it's been about a minute and the vacuum is still holding. So now we're simply going to crack this valve open and let the magic happen. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but the coolant is going from the bucket through this hose to our cooling system. So now we're just going to simply wait, keeping an eye on the coolant level in our bucket, making sure that our hose stays at the bottom of the bucket and it doesn't suck in air and defeat the whole purpose of using this tool. All right, so it's been about 3 to 4 minutes, I'm guessing, and our gauge, as you can see, reads about 0. I closed off this valve once that happened, and as you can see, we still have a decent amount of coolant, but that's normal because I put a lot of coolant in there because I didn't want to take a chance of sucking in air. Now it goes without saying again, if you want to do this method, you obviously need this vacuum filler tool for your cooling system, but you also need a good air compressor and, buckets and hoses and whatnot. But the other two methods, especially the first method, only costs you a couple of bucks, or a funnel, which most people have around the house. The second method, the spill-free funnel, a lot cheaper, 27 bucks than, buying this tool and getting an air compressor if you don't have one. But yeah, it's just like everything else. The more money you spend, the faster you probably can get things done. But it's a balance that you have to decide for yourself. So yeah, don't forget to subscribe, hit that bell notification, give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Check out my other videos on this side of the screen, links in the description and also in the suggestion box as well. All right, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.